For the past 4.5 years, the Indian and the Chinese armies were eyeball to eyeball along the line of actual control. And then before the Kazan SCO summit, the PLA announced that it would pull back. The Indians had held their ground, and when I speak to officials in the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs, they can't quite explain why the PLA agreed to pull back. I mean, they say we don't even know why they came in. We just held our ground, did what we had to, stood firm, and now they're going back, and thank God for that. Looked at from your lens, why do you think Xi Jinping, because I don't think the PLA could have taken the decision on their own, why do you think Xi Jinping has chosen to improve relations with India at this juncture?
It's a very good question. Nobody really knows the answer. As you say, nobody really understood why the PLA pushed in the Himalayas as they did in the first place. So one has to get, because the puzzle is this, Rahul, which is Xi Jinping has had a more aggressive policy, foreign policy, since he came into power. But it was mostly directed at staunch allies of the United States or the United States itself. US, Australia, Taiwan, those were the areas. But he also, you saw this incursion in India. There's a part of me that thinks there is something going on in that area, which is in the conception of the hardliners in Beijing, is vital to their national security or to their sense of national unity. Remember, this idea of national unity is very important for the Chinese. And the area, as you know, is essentially part of Tibet, and Tibet is part of their conception of, the unity of China is centrally involves the idea of control of Tibet, control of Mongolia, control of Taiwan. These are very core issues because they have solved, I think I'm right in saying this, they have solved 15 of the 16 border disputes they have with their neighbors. The one they have not solved is India. So there's some issue that for them is very sensitive. And so I think what happened in the incursion in the first place is it might have been some misunderstanding or miscalculation. The local commanders went forward, but they were not willing to pull back. They were not willing to compromise. They were not willing to. Now, why has he changed? I think Xi has realized that his whole wolf warrior diplomacy has failed. Look, they tried in Australia to blackmail the Australians with the sort of 14 demands. It went nowhere. The Australians didn't budge. If they tried in the Philippines became more pro-American. They've tried in Southeast Asia in general. It hasn't worked. They tried in Europe. The Europeans are more aligned with the US strategy toward China. And I think, there's a fundamental misunderstanding the Chinese have of their rise. Maybe they look at their rise and they look at America and say, America rose to power and just became more and more influential. America's rise is very unusual because America is surrounded by two vast oceans and two very weak neighbors. So America's rise does not, essentially, inherently threaten anyone. And America is often seen as far away, this far-off power occasionally comes in, restores the balance of order, interferes depending on your point of view, but it goes back. China is rising in the middle of a very crowded continent. Right next to China is India, is Japan, is Vietnam, and as China rises, it makes countries like that very anxious and insecure. And so I think they've handled their rise completely wrong. They should have been much more accommodating. That was the Deng Xiaoping model. And maybe there's a course correction taking place. But you'll notice it's a fairly modest course correction. I mean, I would have thought Xi would have tried, if I was Xi Jinping, I would say the way you outfox the Americans is you make closer and closer deals with India. And Modi was not opposed to that when Xi Jinping came to power. People often forget that Modi's first use of the word, multilateral, not multi-aligned foreign policy. When he started talking about a multi-aligned foreign policy, India had very good relations with China. And many people interpreted that to mean, I'm going to have good relations with America and with China. The Chinese squandered that. And so if they could have found a way to manage to have closer economic and technology and political ties with India, that would throw the biggest spanner in the wrench in America's strategy in Asia. But they're still not able to do it because I think she still at some level believes, look, we are the leading power in Asia. We should be given the respect we deserve. Other nations should be kowtowing to us. Not literally in the old Chinese sense, but should be paying us deference. And of course, India is never going to pay China deference.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.